Hi everyone, my name is Tomas Potlatch and our topic is should genetically modified foods be labeled? And we have the con side of this topic. Introduction. Over the past decade, the use of genetically modified food labeling has ignited a controversial global debate. Genetically enhanced foods are unique because they have been altered at a molecular level to serve a specific purpose. Several groups of people have supported and disagreed with the implementation of genetically modified organisms, also called GMOs, into society due to the various benefits and risks that come along with them. Of the numerous benefits, many people approve of the use of GMOs because they are resistant to pests, diseases, and harsh climates, while having the ability to fight hunger and malnutrition. On the other hand, some do not concur with the use of enhanced foods due to the fact that GMO companies are not heavily regulated, and the modified foods could potentially be detrimental to human health and the environment in the long run. Ultimately, there are several risks and disadvantages that play a great role in the utilization of genetic engineering for food. However, should GMO foods be labeled? Genetically engineered food are the key to the next wave of advances in agriculture and health, says Jennifer Ackerman. One of the major values of GM foods is that they are resistant to pests and certain diseases. Best explained by Deborah B. Whitman, a researcher from Brown University. Engineered crops have been modified in the laboratory to strengthen desired traits, such as resistance to herbicides. Additionally, GMOs have been shown to be tolerant to harsh environments. For instance, a certain crop could be altered to have increased resilience to drought. Aside from the physical attributes, GM foods also allow farmers to have a significantly larger yield, while paying a much lower price. As a result of having more resilient crops, farmers do not have to pay as much to maintain their farms. Consequently, having bigger yields allows for less fortunate people to gain access to affordable food. Overall, GM crops could be used to eventually end world hunger and malnutrition. Clearly, genetically engineered foods are beneficial to both farmers and consumers. Although GMOs are helpful in many ways, they also have very negative effects on human health and the environment. One immediate health concern with eating genetically modified foods is allergens. For example, there was a contamination in the year 2000 where GM corn was not approved to feed humans that got mixed with produce used for craft products. Several people reported severe allergic reactions and major recalls resulted. Not only can GMOs harm humans, but they can also harm nature as well. People are worried that poisons in GMO plants may harm other birds, plants, animals, and even insects. An example, organisms like caterpillars, bees, and birds may be most affected due to the symbiotic relationship with the crops. Also, small independent farmers' crops can be damaged by neighboring GM crops. To top it all off, GMO companies are not completely regulated by the government, which allows them to operate without limitations. Therefore, GM foods pose a serious threat to society. The risks versus benefits of genetically modified food labeling is not a very easy issue to settle. Many people believe that they have the right to be informed of what they are eating, while others think that companies should not have to note that their products are made from genetically modified ingredients. In this paper, we will analyze the history of genetically modified foods, advocacy groups, and the role of Congress in policy making regarding this issue. Overall, we will discuss the negative implications of genetically modified food labeling.
Hi, my name is Leona Newton, and I will be doing History of Genetic Modification. Geneticists wondered if it was possible to alter the genes of an organism directly instead of the traditional selective breeding technique. In the 1970s, scientists found it was possible to cut and alter certain genes to change the genotypic and phenotypic features of an organism. Geneticists began altering the genes of organisms using biotechnology to have the trait they desired. Selective breeding is a form of genetic modification, breeding two organisms with specific traits you want to pass down to their offsprings. Hunters bred wolves that were less aggressive towards humans over and over again, and many generations later came the domestic house dog. Biologists and geneticists can also genetically modify fruits to be bigger and tastier for consumers to profit more.
Hello, my name is Ronald Mergen. I'm going to be talking about the authority to set labeling standards. Does it depend on Congress or the states? A highly debated issue on the subject of labeling genetically modified foods is if the federal government should take control of these laws or the state at a local level. Either Congress or the state choosing has their own pros and cons. If the state were to control the labeling standards on GMOs, then each state would be able to hold their own opinions on the matter. States that oppose the labeling of GMOs would have the liberty to choose if it is beneficial or not to pass laws, and for those who support the labeling of GMOs could do so at a state level. If Congress took it upon themselves to have the authority over the labeling of the genetically modified produce, then certain states would have to be pushed to partake in an unjust statute. Currently, there are multiple states that have already taken it upon themselves to set laws concerning GMO labeling. However, recently a federal law set by the United States Department of Agriculture has made it so that companies that use GMOs must label all their products. It seems that the federal government is taking on more authority in labeling genetically modified produce.
Hi, my name is Ishmael Hunter, and today I'll be talking about the global consensus on the safety of foods derived from crops improved through biotechnology. Around the world, there have been many disputed on whether GMOs are safe for humans, and while most people say yes, the smaller group says no. GMOs are not safe for humans or the environment around them. With the use of GMO in the United States alone, the percentage of chronic illnesses have increased by around 4% since 1994. While 4% doesn't seem like a lot, it rounds to about 42.53 million people in the United States. There has also been backed up studies that show GMOs do in fact leave foreign materials in the body that can cause harm. With all the chemicals used on the crops, it becomes increasingly easy for it to get into the system and damage the human body. With this information, GMOs have already been completely banned in 19 countries in Europe. GMOs need to be taken out of the global market and replaced with more safer, purer foods, which becomes harder to find with more GMO fields in the world.
My name is Kira Magana, and I'm doing Motivations of Anti-GMOs Advocacy Groups. Anti-GMO Group stands against GMOs. GMOs are genetically modified organisms whose genetic material has been changed or altered using genetic engineering. Genetic engineering changes the DNA sequence in crops in order to get the best growing crops. GMOs help prevent insects or weeds on farming crops. GMOs alter the crops, making them not 100% organic. This raises the question whether they are good or not. The question also arising is whether genetically modified foods should be labeled. Anti-GMO groups support labeling genetically modified foods. It is not exactly that they support labeling, but they are looking towards getting rid of genetically modified foods. The executive director of Center for Food Safety, Andrew Kimbrough, stated, "We're going to force them to label this food. If we have it labeled, then we can organize people not to buy it." If genetically modified foods are labeled, people will be able to easily detect which food contains GMOs. This will help prevent the purchase of genetically modified foods, as supported by anti-GMO groups. This that is not labeled is still sitting in the stores, and consumers are buying these products not knowing that these foods are genetically modified. By labeling food, customers will know which foods are genetically modified and which are organic. Joseph Mercola, who sells unlabeled, unregulated products, believes that genetically modified foods should be banned. Since GM foods can be banned, labeling can be used to lower the purchase of GM foods. Ronnie Cummins, the director of the Organic Consumers Association, believes in the first step in reducing GM food products and increasing organic food product is by changing the labeling laws. Jeffrey Smith explains that by avoiding GMOs, you can force them out of the food supply. This means that if genetically modified foods are labeled, the purchasing and consumption of them will be reduced. Genetically modified foods will not be banned, but they can be reduced. If genetically modified foods become labeled, customers will be able to identify them, and they will not be purchased much. Anti-GMO advocacy groups want to make food have GM labels with intentions to reduce genetically modified foods.
Hi, my name is Corinne Afnery, and I will be concluding Team 2's topic of the cons of genetically modified foods being labeled. In the article, Should Genetically Modified Foods Be Labeled?, Val Giddings argues that genetically modified crops are scientifically proven to be safe to consume. She also says the push for labeling is an effort to ban genetically modified foods and promote more expensive organic foods. Labeling the food with GMO will only decrease the sales of these harmless, inexpensive foods and disrupt a large portion of the food industry's economy. There is no evidence of any adverse impact on one's health from consuming crops that have been improved through biotechnology. Over the years, the number of GMOs consumed by humans has increased dramatically, and no study has pointed out detrimental effects specifically caused by these foods. In fact, a study that examined the effects on livestock after eating genetically modified foods for 29 years found that over this period, the average health of livestock animals improved. Additionally, the anti-GMO advocacy groups who pushed for the labeling of genetically modified foods have a clear agenda. They know genetically modified often has a negative connotation, and they wish to use this to their advantage and discourage people from purchasing these items. Consumers who then turn to organic foods will end up spending more money periodically rather than saving it for needs such as healthcare and education. These consumers have been deceived and misled to think that genetically modified foods are harmful to both humans and the environment.